$3 billion of accumulated debt in 1991, and almost nobody talks about how it vaporized aviation's absolute king. This business documentary examines how a global empire was brought down by strategic blindness, leading to a historic corporate collapse. To understand how the king fell, we have to look back at the vision of its legendary founder, Juan Trippe. In the late 1920s, Trippe saw international aviation not as a luxury novelty, but as the future of global trade. Pan Am secured exclusive airmail contracts, establishing routes across Latin America that competitors simply could not access. The company quickly became the unofficial diplomatic arm of the United States, carrying American influence to every ocean. Their massive flying boats, the Clippers, offered unprecedented luxury, turning ocean crossings into a high society event. But Trippe was never satisfied with just the elite. He wanted to bring aviation to the global masses. In 1958, Pan Am inaugurated the jet age, flying the Boeing 707 across the Atlantic. By the 1960s, the brand stood at its absolute peak, synonymous with glamorous travel and global prestige. It was at this very peak of triumph that the first critical leadership mistake was made, fueled by unchecked hubris. Juan Trippe made a massive bet, placing an order for 25 of the brand new Boeing 747 jumbo jets. The $500 million commitment was a staggering sum, representing an immense gamble on sustained passenger growth. But just as these giant aircraft entered service, the global economy took a sudden, devastating turn. The 1973 oil crisis sent fuel costs soaring, while the global recession caused passenger demand to plummet. Pan Am's brand new fleet of jumbo jets was flying mostly empty, draining millions of dollars from the treasury. This exposed the airline's fatal structural vulnerability: the complete absence of a domestic route network. Pan Am could fly you from New York to London, but it could not legally fly you from Chicago to New York. Other airlines fed their international flights with domestic passengers, but Pan Am had to rely entirely on competitors for feed. Inside the executive boardroom, tension was rising as executives realized they were completely cut off from the American heartland. The airline's downfall timeline accelerated rapidly in 1978 with the passage of the Airline Deregulation Act. Suddenly, the government stopped controlling routes and prices, unleashing a wave of fierce, low-cost competition. Domestic carriers flooded the international routes that Pan Am had spent decades building, undercutting their ticket prices. Desperate to establish a domestic network overnight, Pan Am set its sights on acquiring national airlines. A bidding war broke out with Texas International, driving the acquisition price up to astronomical levels. Pan Am eventually won the bidding war, but they paid a massive, unjustifiable premium for the carrier. This acquisition would prove to be one of the most disastrous operational moves in aviation history. The fleet of national airlines did not match Pan Am's, creating immediate, highly expensive maintenance headaches. Even worse, the labor forces were highly hostile, leading to union clashes that paralyzed the airline's operations. The flawed corporate strategy failed to integrate the networks, leaving Pan Am with even deeper financial losses. With cash reserves drying up, the company entered a desperate survival phase, selling off its most valuable assets. In 1980, they sold their iconic Manhattan headquarters building, a towering symbol of their former greatness. Next went the highly profitable Intercontinental Hotels chain, sacrificed just to keep the planes flying. But these asset sales were short-term band-aids that failed to address the structural bleeding of the core airline. Let's be honest, selling your office building to pay your light bill is never a winning long-term business plan. In 1985, a truly desperate leadership decided to sell their entire Pacific route network to United Airlines. The Pacific division was Pan Am's historical crown jewel, and its sale cut off their most promising future growth. Just as the airline was clinging to survival, a sudden, tragic catastrophe shattered what was left of public trust. The aftermath of Flight 103 was a silent, empty terminal. Pan Am was already vulnerable, but now a terrified public simply stopped booking tickets, sealing the carrier's fate in a matter of weeks. The Lockerbie disaster in December of 1988 exposed severe security gaps, turning the beloved brand into a symbol of fear. Bookings on transatlantic routes collapsed overnight, costing the airline millions of dollars in canceled reservations. By 1990, the Gulf War erupted, causing global fuel prices to spike to unprecedented levels. International air travel plummeted worldwide, and Pan Am had absolutely no financial buffer left to absorb the shock. On January 8, 1991, Pan Am filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, hoping to restructure. But restructuring required a massive influx of external cash that no sensible investor was willing to provide. Delta Airlines stepped forward, purchasing the remaining profitable transatlantic routes and their iconic European hub. Delta also agreed to fund a smaller, scaled-back version of Pan Am, focusing primarily on Latin America. However, the losses of the remaining airline continued to mount, far exceeding Delta's financial projections. In early December 1991, Delta finally pulled the plug, refusing to inject any more cash. On December 4, 1991, the final Clipper flight landed, and the global giant immediately ceased all operations. The Blue Globe logo was quietly taken down from airport terminals, marking the silent end of an aviation empire. In business as in life, the dangerous illusion of being too big to fail is the exact moment the descent begins. If this collapse taught you something, like, comment with a company you want us to autopsy next, and subscribe for more boardroom mistakes that changed industries.